Hey, it's Les from the TV Dudes. This week, I'm thrilled to chat with director and writer Kelsey Egan. Kelsey is responsible for one of my favorite films from last year's Fantastic Fest, a sci-fi dystopian fairy tale called Glasshouse. It's an amazing feature from the look of it to the story itself, and I found myself thinking about it for weeks after. Kelsey is an amazing talent to watch, and Glasshouse will be available digital and on demand July 12th. It's a fun interview, and I hope you enjoy. Thank you so much for making time today. Hi.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I appreciate it.
So it's afternoon for you, is that right?
It is 4 p.m.
9 a.m. for me. Magic of time.
Yeah, where are you?
I'm in Austin, Texas.
Okay, right on.
Yeah, so I actually saw Glasshouse at Fantastic Fest
Amazing.
and really loved it. And it's always weird when the fest goes on for a little while. You realize that a crowd of folks only saw like one half of the fest or the other, or everybody has to make choices. And then the last couple of years, it's been different. Hanging out after festivals, there's not been as much, I feel like, crowd discussion of movies afterwards.
Well, there haven't been as many crowds. It's
exactly.
Like it's been a completely different world.
And so I realized, I don't know, a month or so after Fantastic Fest that I was one of the few among my friend group who had gotten to see Glasshouse. And so I started trying to chase down, like, well, when is this coming out? When do I finally get to see it? I was so thrilled to get the email about getting to talk to you and getting to screener link to get to watch it again. I got to show it to my partner as well, and she loved it. How much of do you want if we just jump right in? I have
no,
some
not at all.
questions.
Go for it. Yeah, please.
And I'm gonna try my best to not. I really want folks to see this, so I don't want to spoil the transformation.
Yeah, it's a delicate exercise, but I have lots of experience now discussing that with trying not to give away spoilers. Yeah.
The opening shot frames the house just so beautifully, like straight down, and it really made me wonder how much of the prep of this movie was dependent on being able to, if not find a location like this, at least cube style or whatever, figure out how to shoot a location that looks like this. I started to realize as the movie went on that I might not necessarily be looking at the same building that I saw top down. Movies are magical.
Oh, you were. I have to say, no, we got so lucky, and I'll give you all the insider scoop there. First of all, I have to credit my incredible producer, Greg Buckle, with that opening shot. He made that possible. And that was a VFX shot combined with a drone shot. And so it was CG into the actual drone shot that we used. And as an exceptional way to set the stage for the world in a low budget context with just one shot. So that was Greg's genius and producing savvy to make sure we got that. And in terms of the location itself, I will admit to being very, very guilty of with the naughty influence of my work wife and writing partner, Emma Lungisot-Devet, who's exceptionally talented. We did that incredibly naughty thing where you write a script for a location before you know if you can actually get the location. Which you're never supposed to do. And Emma grew up in Port Elizabeth. She grew up just in the Eastern Cape outside, but she has memories of visiting Pearson Conservatory as a child in that park there. And it's a real Victorian glass house that was imported from the UK. And I think 3 were gifted to South Africa and only 1 has survived, and it's that one. And there's exceptional, like, old photography of the opening of this building, like 100 years ago. Like it's really remarkable, and they've restored it beautifully. But she had memories as a child of visiting it and it being such a magical place and being like, this as a set of a film would just be exceptional. And she showed it to me when we came up with the concept of Glasshouse, and she always had it in her head. And she showed it to me, and I was like, oh my word, like, obviously this is our location. And then we wrote the entire movie with Pearson's in mind, having zero idea whether or not we'd actually get the permissions. And then Emma just went in and used all her Eastern Cape charm, and Eastern Cape tourism got involved, and everyone was so supportive of us using the location and sort of celebrating that location as sort of one of the gifts that PE has to offer everyone who lives there. And yeah, it was very much a charmed experience. We got very lucky.
It looks amazing. You had mentioned the drone shot into the VFX shot. One of the things I've started to notice recently is how easily one or two well-timed drone shots suddenly somehow makes my brain think that I am looking at a twice the budget movie.
It's a wonderful trick, isn't it?
It is amazing. Another film I'd seen at Fantastic Fest used, I think, just one drone shot of a car driving, and there was something about it that I believed that we were in a much higher budget film.
Don't give away all of our secrets, Taylor.
Were there places? I love so much of the set decoration and design of Glasshouse, the bonnets and the breathing apparatus, and leaning into the sci-fi. I don't need to know how the breathing apparatus works, and I'm so glad we didn't get into the weeds of it.
Yeah, who cares?
Exactly.
We knew. That was what mattered.
Yeah, and I, not to give away spoilers, but so much of these things add up so beautifully to how the horror of this film transforms for me. The thing I thought we were going to be scared of is not the thing that I should actually have sweated. Were there spots in the production design where you thought, okay, well, we can skirt on this, but this has to look perfect?
Yeah, I was pretty particular about those bonnets. But it was interesting because when we were writing the script, it was one of those charmed experiences. I wrote it over the first major South African lockdown with Emma, and I wrote the whole script on my balcony on Zoom with Emma. And it was one of those, it really was, it did feel like channeling, where Emma and I we wrote the first scene together. And in writing that first scene together, we found an identical voice. And then we alternated. She writes all even scenes, I write all odd scenes, and then we script edit each other's scenes. Mm-hmm. And then we always have one good fight per scene, and we come out with something 10 times better. And when we finished the first draft of the script, we had this moment because we were like, can I swear? Am I allowed to swear?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
Excellent. We were like, holy fuck. We think we just pulled off writing a shooting script in a first draft, which neither of us had ever done before. Because, that's the unicorn. You never, normally any feature script go through like 6 drafts, and it still has issues you find in production. Mm-hmm. And it's like, but the process that we went through in this very isolated time, I was in lockdown alone. She was in lockdown with her partner. I was on this balcony, and the way that it all came together, it was just like we had this incredibly tight, and we realized as we were writing it that we were writing a fairy tale. And then as the images were like cementing in my mind as we wrote the script, there was no question at any point what the look of the film needed to be, as I realized we were writing a fairy tale. And I think part of that is also the subversion of expectation, because so much of the lives of this family is based on a facade. And that's what we wanted to capture with the visuals as well, of this idyllic pastoral facade of one thing, but there's rot underneath, and that colonial nod as well, of like the price you pay for deception, the price you pay to live a certain type of life. Mm-hmm. Like how much blood is on your hands for that?
Well, and I've always been intrigued by storytelling, the idea of memory, the stories that we tell ourselves to survive things, and then you look back at colonial times and realize, or anytime anything's harder, how much more important those stories become.
Fabrications are, yeah.
That you've got to really get your identity boiled down in core so that you can hold on to yourself.
Everything is a story we tell ourselves, and oftentimes those stories are just security blankets. I'm not a big fan of that. I'm not a big fan of rewriting narratives. I feel like the truth that you experience is the truth, and if you're trying to rewrite a narrative just to feel better about yourself, then you're missing something. And that's probably why therapists hate me, because I'm not very easy to therapy.
Yeah, and it's lying to yourself to survive, and I absolutely understand the tool of it, but yes, it's part of what makes this movie. It's what made it so creepy and scary to me, where I was thinking about it a week after seeing it, because the shred as a plague is terrifying. I've lost family members to dementia and Alzheimer's, and it's terrifying, and you see how sad and scared they are when my grandfather would have days of suddenly remembering everything again, and that Flowers for Algernon of now you know what you what you didn't have yesterday and won't have tomorrow
it's
was
so,
the worst.
It's you just crying. Like it's horrible. It's horrible.
And I don't know that I'd ever quite seen it handled as a plague before. And I was just, I don't know, delighted is not the right word. Delighted with how it came together in a movie. With how it was handled in Glasshouse. It doesn't, I feel like there were 3 or 4 movies that I got to move through in terms of what I thought the threat was, all while keeping this Margaret Atwood, Anne of Green Gables post-apocalypse kind of look. When you were moving through making it, one of the things that when you said you felt good about the shooting script straight away, I was really wondering in this movie how many of the performances influenced any scenes. It's such a tight cast, and I could see, watching the sisters paint the pollen on the flowers and realizing, in the actual day of blocking it, that like maybe the emotion of the scene is different. Did cores shift for the scenes for you, or did it mostly stick to the script?
It mostly stuck to the script. It was, I'm telling you, this was like a really charmed process, but also my cast channeled the characters so beautifully. Like I was just actually on another publicity call with Anya, who played Evie, and we were talking about the casting tapes. Like pretty much every casting tape we got from who ended up being our core cast were just our entire cast. I mean, the whole cast was the core cast. It was a brilliant ensemble, but they were the character from their first initial casting tape. They just got it. They got the heart and soul of what we were trying to capture. Because for Emma and I, we both also have family members that have suffered from memory loss. Emma has a close family member who suffered from dementia, and I have a close family member who suffered from pretty severe short-term memory loss from not getting oxygen to their brain for enough time during a procedure. And you lose a person. And there's nothing more painful than not only that loss to you, but knowing that they are aware that they have lost it, like what Gabe goes through. Mm-hmm. And so much of memory informs identity and sense of self and purpose and how you behave in the present, because, there's no denying how much our past experiences inform how we engage in the now. And Emma and I were most interested in exploring that central conflict of, does the past always make you better? Because I think there's this, again, security blanket narrative that what we go through makes us stronger, that the trauma we experienced, makes us grow as a human being. And I think that's a lie that we tell ourselves. I think everyone that I know, my own experiences going through trauma, it hasn't made me a better person. It's made me more fearful. It's definitely, you look at PTSD and what that does to families, what that does to the way you approach life. And the sort of extra anxiety or panic in terms of overreactions to things that are overreactions, but because you're constantly haunted by this thing in your past that you can't get rid of experiencing and you can't erase it. And I think that was why it was so interesting to us to take 2 sisters who had a completely fundamental different way of coping with a sort of a shared trauma or collective past, where and how fearless and fierce both of them were in insisting that their way was the necessary way to be. And that central conflict was, fascinating to Emma and I, but also very personal in terms of what allows you to have the best possible life.
Yeah, I felt like it's one of my favorite things in sci-fi, when the human relationship is true, regardless of whether we're on a space station or the apocalypse or what. And I felt like that watching 2 siblings deal with the same set of issues in a completely different way felt so true. Just the amount of times that I've watched my own family or friends' families just completely split on how to handle a parent's ill, or how to handle an illness, or various things, and and both completely sure that they're right in their handling, and they are right for them.
Right.
In talking about your film experience in general, your career in general, when you were first starting out, I know you had done, it looks like what I think a lot of us have done, is get on a set doing any job and then try to look around for the job you want.
Yeah, you notice how ADHD my IMDb profile is.
I felt for you on transport coordinator. But I get, there's things that I had read in books about how sets run or how jobs worked, and then you just don't see it until you see a set run, and realize that every single human you can see within your field of vision has a job and is carrying something and, and are tasked.
Organized chaos.
It's amazing. When you were first getting into the film industry, did you always have an eye on making your own stories, or did that grow out of just a love of making stories with everybody?
Both, but I started out in the theater. I was an actress and then a director in theater in school, and ended up majoring and I did a double major, neuroscience and behavior, and then added theater with a directing concentration. And when I fell into the film industry, and I really did fall into it, I was cast in an independent film in New York, and then I was just instantly hooked because my mind was blown by exactly that phenomenon you just described. The incredibly frenetic, overwhelming sense of so many people doing so many important things, and how does it all come together, and that the level and degree of collaboration and organization required to pull off some of the things that we'll know every day. I mean, it's a miracle that any film gets made, but that level of collaboration and cooperation, it's military precision. It's a very, very specific dynamic or world in which everyone knows their job. And I think for me, I feel exceptionally lucky to have come up working in South Africa, because it enabled me the freedom to be the person who popped up on a film set, on a pretty massive film set every year in a different department. Because if I'd stayed in LA or if I'd stayed in New York, I was getting groomed by an exceptionally talented producer. I was so lucky to be hired by him, Declan Baldwin. He was my mentor through and through, and I learned so much from him. And I was also very naive in being, he was such a gift to learn from him. And then I did that thing that people in their early 20s do and be like, I just want to run away to another country and just start from scratch, because why not do that? Which in a lot of ways was making things as hard as possible for myself. But as a creative, I also felt, I knew I wanted to be a director. I knew I wanted to write my own work. And I felt like if I stayed in the bubble of what was familiar to me, I would never have enough of a perspective shift to represent or truly speak to perspectives or opinions that were outside of my own realm or the world that I was brought up in. And so I kind of forced myself into a fish out of water scenario intentionally, but when I was young enough that I didn't really consider what longer term consequences that might have. Oops. But I'm really grateful for the opportunities I have, because if I hadn't moved to South Africa, I never would have been a stunt performer. That version of me wouldn't have existed in America. There's no way. I would eventually have ended up in LA as a development exec or as a producer behind a desk. I would never have gotten the set experience that I've had, and I wouldn't have been able to bounce across departments the way I did. And all of that was a choice made to have as much familiarity with actual jobs and responsibilities and thought processes of many departments as possible, so that as a director, I could facilitate giving them the information they needed it when they needed it to maximize their contribution to the show. Because coming up also as an executive assistant, working with EPs and directors, you saw where things fell through the cracks and where certain departments were not empowered to leverage their expertise because of the communication channels not operating in an optimal way. And usually it's no one's fault. Usually it's just everyone's trying to do so much and it's absolutely overwhelming. But when you get a sense for the rhythm of it, and everyone knows their job and everyone's so passionate and their craftsmanship is so good, and you can directorially facilitate that and be like, cool, this is the vision. We all understand it. We all know what we're working towards. And my job is simply to facilitate you getting all the things that you need to maximize it in realizing this vision. It's such a gift. And that was the thing about film that blew me away, because film is one of the last bastions of artisans, true artisans work in the film industry from across the board, props, production design, camera, lighting, the art of light. All of this is really, really specialized skills that, it's all artists across every department. And it's really a privilege to be able to work with so many talented people. And that's not even talking about the cast,
Right. I don't mean to short shrift the talent in any project, but I remain stunned by watching people, save hours on a setup because they in their head just know what light will do. And no, you can't set the camera there. We need to set it over here because in 2 hours this will.
Yeah, it's tracking the sun.
Stunning. I know that when I was watching this at Fantastic Fest, I think you were already in pre-production for The Fix. And I'm not sure how much you can talk about that project, but I'm excited to get to see another, at least slightly from what I can tell, sci-fi outing from you. Can you talk a little bit about it?
I can. So funny story about that. I mean, I don't know if it's a funny story. It's like, it's a crazy story, but I wrote that script 9 years ago. I've been trying to make that movie. I've been trying to make this movie for 9 years. And I was, I remember many sales agents remember me pitching up in Cannes, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, trying to punt this movie as the director, the writer, and the producer with no feature credits to my name. And they're all like, "You're fucking crazy. Who the fuck are you?" And I got amazing meetings, with incredible people. I mean, and I'm really grateful to have met them, and I learned a lot from them. But everyone was just sort of bemused, who are you? And through trial and error, I got to a point where I was working with Greg, and then Greg and I spent, I think, 5-6 years together, just working on getting the financing, the packaging, and Allison Freeman joined in 2018. And then it ended up being the trio of us. And it was a really interesting process because from a local South African point of view, it was this project is far too ambitious and big budget to be financed locally. And then from the international point of view is this project, we don't believe you'll be able to pull it off at the budget level that you can get with what you being a first-time director and how ambitious the script is. And we were like, no, we know we can pull it off because we know what South African talent, both behind the camera and in front of the camera, is capable of. We've been servicing your giant studio pictures for years. We know exactly what we can do. And they did not feel safe or secure in that because of not it being a model of filmmaking that they weren't familiar with. And that's why it took us 9 years to finance and package it. And it was very exciting to finally get to the point where we were able to do that. And even we were actually supposed to go in production on it in 2019, and a piece of the financing that we had secured fell away. It was very sad. We had a film fund, a brand new film fund on board that was providing a piece of the financing, and then their investor that they had contracted with ended up not paying into the fund. So they had a slate of 6 projects that then didn't go. But it's indie filmmaking at its finest, right? So we thought we were going to go, then we had to shut down. It was heartbreaking. I mean, I went into and it was not a good couple of months for me. And then, you pull yourself up again. And then Emma and I and Greg, we pitched the slate. We pitched a couple of concepts to Showmax, hoping they might pick one. Mm-hmm. And they ended up coming back and greenlighting the slate, of which Glasshouse was the first film 1 week before going into South African lockdown. The other thing that was so creepy is that Emma and I came up with the concept for Glasshouse in early February before we had any idea the impact the pandemic was going to have. Mm. So the whole process ended up being this very surreal, meta life imitates art experience because we ended up with a project because I've always written grounded sci-fi. Same with The Fix. It's terrifying how relevant that script is now, to the point that everyone's going to think I wrote it in response to the pandemic, which is actually really annoying because no, guys, I'm omnipotent, but no one's going to know that. I'm just going to look. That's quite frustrating. Because that script has been in circulation for years. Everyone knows it. Mm-hmm. Everyone loved the script. They just didn't feel safe at the budget level and what we could pull off. And we are so proud. I'm so proud of this movie. Yeah.
And so y'all are in post-production now. Is that right?
Yeah, we're doing our VFX now. Yeah.
I can't wait to see it. And folks will get to see, at least folks in the US, I think will get to see Glasshouse July 12th. And I can't thank you enough for talking to me. We could go another 30 minutes. I know. There's so much that's the thing. I love movies for ideas.
if you can inspire thought or provoke a way of looking at the world that you haven't necessarily looked at it before, or anything that can inspire a conversation and serious conversation around something, that's what I love. And I'm so grateful that the film seems to be serving that purpose.
I hope it gets widely seen and resonates with others like it did with me. I both loved the look of it and wanted to tell people about this sci-fi movie that doesn't look like whatever you're picturing in your head about a post-apocalyptic sci-fi. I promise this looks prettier than you're imagining. But also it is downright terrifying as you start to realize what all you should be scared of in this world. I really
weird thing to say thank you to, but I'm so glad.
Yeah. But yes, thank you for scaring the crap out of me with future sci-fi dementia.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I had a wonderful time chatting with you. Have a great rest of your day.
Yeah. Thank you. It was great chatting to you too. Really appreciate it. Have a good one. Bye.
TV Dudes is an independently run podcast out of Austin, Texas. We are exclusively listener supported. If you'd like to help us out, go to patreon.com/TVDudes.
You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at TV Dudes. All the music for our show is done by our friend and original TV dude, Gregory J. Amani Smith.
To find out more about us, go to thetvdudes.com. I'm Randy Lander.
I'm Les Weiler.
And I'm Kyle Scott.
Thanks for listening.